Our gospel today is a good illustration of the saying, God helps those who help themselves. You know, if there is anything evident in the description of the two blind men in our gospel today, it is the fact that they knew how to help themselves, in spite of the fact that Jesus was ignoring them. And Matthew makes it obvious why. The two blind men were making a scene as they cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have pity on us. The blind men, by calling him Son of David, were practically proclaiming him publicly as the Messiah, whom people expected to come from the line of King David. And that was a perfect formula for getting Jesus into trouble with the authorities. Now, how is this different from the story of Mark about the blind beggar Bartimaeus in Mark chapter 10? Well, there, in the version of St. Mark, Jesus actually stopped and asked the disciples to call the beggar over. But here, in the story of St. Matthew, Jesus simply ignored them. Inisnab sila, dinedma. And he just kept walking on until he reached the house to which he was going. Meaning, he did not pay any attention to them. Sigaw ng sigaw, deadma lang si Jesus. But Matthew tells us the two blind men did not give up. They helped themselves by helping each other find their way to the house in which Jesus had entered. You know, I am reminded here of that rhetorical question posed by Jesus in Luke chapter 6, verse 39. Can a blind person guide another blind person? Will not both of them fall into a pit? Well, here in the gospel, you have an example of two blind men guiding each other without falling into the pit. They were blind, all right, but they could hear well and they could talk clearly. You know, they say nature has a way of making sure that people who have disabilities will be able to maximize their use of their other abilities. Kaya nga ngayon, has become politically incorrect to call them disabled. Anong disabled? They have other abilities. Most likely, these two blind men used their sense of touch or sense of smell to be able to locate the house to which Jesus had entered. And even there inside the house, Jesus did not stop challenging them. For instance, he asked them, do you really believe that I can do this? And after Jesus gives in to their request and after they actually get healed, Jesus tells them to keep quiet about it. It was Jesus' way of saying, okay, now don't get me into trouble, all right? That was why I initially avoided you when you called out to me. But the blind men are also consistent. If nothing could stop them from pursuing Jesus, nothing would also keep them from talking about their experience of healing when their wish is granted. You know, the story tells us one thing about the character of Jesus. He was not attention hungry. Hindi nagpapapansin. In many instances, in fact, he even deliberately tried to avoid public notice. I'm sure he was aware of the possible consequences, that it would be more difficult for him to move about freely and be able to visit the people he wanted to visit. But that's another story yet. Something or sometimes being ignored need not be a reason for engaging in self-pity. Di ba, minsan hindi lang napansin, nagsi-self-pity na, nobody helps you? No problem. You can crawl if you need to, if only to have an access to Jesus. You can find your way to Him. Or you can even pester Him, the way the Syrophoenician woman did in another story. Or remember that woman who stood her ground after several rejections? The determination to get healed is as essential as the experience itself of healing. God does not give up on us. So why should we give up on ourselves?